Travis Wayne Goodsell. In a video I did the other day, can't remember when, it wasn't too long ago, I brought up the sign in the heavens for yesterday. I don't know how many people care, but let's bring up the scripture on that. Being locked up for 6 years of my life took me away from a lot of movies and songs, and I watched a movie theater release in 2008 in June called Wanted. It was with Angelina Jolie, and I can't remember the guy's name because it's the guy, you know, I remember Angelina Jolie. She was actually the villain in the story. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to spoil the ending for you. It's 2008. You guys have all seen it. I haven't. So I've got little things in my mind from Danny Elfman. Let's see, 3rd Nephi chapter 1. Yeah, we're here. But we gotta go. Actually 2, isn't it? That could be the theme song, maybe, because it has Armageddon in there, in the lyrics. So, let's see, yeah. Well, this is when they're not, well, yeah, confirmed, yeah, we're here, we're good. And it came to pass, thus passed away the 95th year also, and the people began to forget those signs and wonders which they had heard from Travis Wayne Goodsell's YouTube channel, and began to be less and less astonished at the sign or a wonder from heaven, insomuch that they began to be hard in their hearts and blind in their minds, and began to disbelieve all which they had heard and seen. So, yeah, there you go. Exactly what I was looking for. And so, yeah, how it works is it's astronomy. It's a science. It's the laws of physics. There is a real sun. It's physical and tangible, but you don't want to touch it. It's not a spiritual witness. And there are planets that go around the sun, and then there's the moon that goes around the earth. So from Earth we see all these as if they're moving around us, and there are constellations because of the band, that they are permanent, or they're fixed, even though they move up and down and such forth and forever. And so the 5 visible planets and the sun and the moon move through the zodiac as seen from Earth. And so the ancients knew this, and they wrote about that in the sense of turning the constellations into persons or animals, and sometimes mystical animals like Pegasus, the flying horse, or the sea serpents that may or may not have actually been real. And then you have the sun and the moon and the planets that also are assigned human characters. And so they're able to tell the stories of the movements of the stars, and thus our scriptures. And I've gone over the years about all of that. Abraham sacrificing Isaac was 8 April 4 CE, and that's there in the Book of Mormon. 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. Ta-da! 4 CE, 8 April. We know what they were trying to tell us. And Samson, the Sun King, and once I knew his Hebrew name, having deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, I then recognized that the deaths in the stories corresponded to solar eclipses because of my education, knowing about the ancient understanding of eclipses. Solar eclipses refer to government and lunar for religion, thus the eyes of Horus. And so I've been educating you guys on that as we've been gone along. But again, Book of Mormon is true. It prophesied that Mormons would lose interest in the signs in the heavens, and sure enough, you guys have lost interest in the signs in the heavens. And so yesterday was a sign in the heavens. It was the 8th day of the Jewish holy day of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Harvest Festival celebration feast. And so it's supposed to bring to mind the scripture from Revelation 19, and Joseph Smith talks about it as well, 58, I believe, about the last day's supper of the Lamb at the temple, the wedding feast. And so it was significant, as it is always the 7th month and the 22nd day of the 7th month in the Jewish calendar. And Joseph Smith, if I need to remind you, September 22nd. Twice, 4 times repeated. September 22nd. September means the 7th month from Latin. And it was only changed by a pope or whoever made the calendar that we use to call it the 9th month. So 9/11 technically should have been 7/11 for the convenience store and gas station in some cases. And so let's go over the sign now that it's happened. And so I paid attention to what events occurred on that day. I already know the characters that are involved in this, and so I'm able to reveal unto you the interpretation thereof. You ain't going to get this from the revelators in the church, that's for certain. And so you have the sun and Venus there at the star Spica. Bethlehem. They are born in Bethlehem from Virgo. Immaculately conceived, because they're not real humans, thus immaculate. See where the Catholics screwed up? And Venus is the bride of Lucifer. Thus, technically Mars, as Mars is President Nelson. And I confirmed that, as I suspected, but had to confirm it when Monson died. Because Nelson's Mars was at the top of the scales of judgment. He was now the judge over the church, as Monson died that evening. And that means Nelson took over, because he was the president of the Quorum of the 12. And so I've been able to watch Mars as it's been moving around all these years, and confirmed a lot of the stuff that Nelson had been doing with the signs that have occurred. And so Venus, therefore, is the church members. In February of 2017, it also could have been his wife, because he gave the genealogy thing that they have every year. Can't remember the actual name of it, but I went to Elko, Nevada, where the flood occurred. I had a friend who got me in to do book signings, and they didn't quite tell me what was expected, and they sort of told me last minute, and financial stress, but I made it there, and despite the flooding that took people away from the event because they needed to sandbag. And nonetheless, It was a memorable time, and I've posted pictures of that event where I'm at a desk, table desk, and I've got my laptop showing 23rd September 2017. You're not going to watch my videos. And so, yeah, Revelation chapter 12, as the Joseph Smith translation corrects it, because verse 5 is in the wrong place. It needs to be moved to verse 3 as part of the sign. And sure enough, I've demonstrated that the Smiths were correct on that, and thus the Book of Mormon is correct on that, because that's the beginning of the Book of Mormon. It's 2017 for the prophecy of the Book of Mormon, the last days. And so Venus is also his wife, as she attended with Nelson as he was here in Salt Lake doing the thing here. And that was that his grandpa, or was that the dead girls? I think it was his grandpa, and then came from the dead or something like that. Other critics were doing videos on that, but yeah, the bride of the church, or the church is the bride of Christ, and so likewise Venus, being the star from Isaiah, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? That's referring to Venus, and that's the symbol of Lucifer as the falling star, and so as the bride of Lucifer as well. You need to know the background history of each of the constellations. You can't just make stuff up. As theoastronomy or theoastrology, whatever it's called, is all BS. And so, yeah, they're at the Star of Bethlehem. They're being born. Both the sun, which is Amun, Emmanuel, and Venus. And so Emmanuel is being born again with Venus, the members of the church, the bride of the church of the Lamb, coming out of the great and abominable church. And the moon is confirming this, as it is in the head of the Gemini twin, who's the immortal version. There's the story about the two stepbrothers through different mothers, is it? But the one brother is mortal, and he dies, and the other brother resurrects him from the dead because of his immortal powers. And so the moon is there with the immortal brother. Thus, similar to being born again, resurrection is a new birth. The church won't bring that part up. They usually refer to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. But it has to do with birth as well. The second birth that is talked about in the Gospels, being a reborn. And so that is cool. Also, what recently occurred was the Geminids and the Orionids appeared as the moon's going by. And so the moon comes into view, and poof, those falling stars also join the moon. And so you can see that they're coming out of the church, the great and abominable church, as the church is falling. The prophecies of the fall of the great and abominable church, the fall of Babylon, as Revelation refers to it. And the Book of Mormon calls it the great and abominable church, and Doctrine and Covenants refers to Babylon, again, section 1, verse 16. Because the church did not decode it. Why didn't they decode Babylon? It's the great and abominable church. Why should they be concerned? Oh, because 14 and 15 are talking about Mormons? And so thus 16 is talking about Mormons. Exactly. That's why Bruce didn't do it. And so the Geminids and the Orionids are also right there with Mars in conjunction, as the moon has come by on the 16th, and then on the 17th, Mars is there with the falling stars. And so the fall of the Great and Abominable Church, and thus the false prophet of the Great and Abominable Church. And in Aries, remember the ram that appeared when Abraham sacrificed Isaac? 8 April 4 CE. The ram represents sacrifice, a death. And so what do we have? We have the northern Taurids, the southern Taurids, and the autumn Aritids that are all right there with the constellation of Aries. So 3 falling stars in Aries. And then the Andromedids, they were at their peak on the 16th into the 17th. And if you are unfamiliar with Andromeda from Clash of the Titans, you wouldn't understand. You need to know your Greek history of Perseus, who was the son of Zeus, half mortal, half immortal, just like the Gemini, brothers of Gemini. And Perseus saves Andromeda from being eaten by the Kraken. Release the Kraken! Because there's the reboot also with Wrath of the Titans, along with the reboot of Clash of the Titans. But even though the reboot was better, you still got to watch the original. And so Andromeda was the woman who was rescued by Perseus, and the manner in which he rescued her was the rock, the falling star. As David threw rocks at Goliath, struck him in his third eye, knocking him down. And so that's all that's encapsulated with Andromeda and the falling stars, is David slaying Goliath, the descendant of King David of the latter days, slaying the Great and Abominable Church, the fall of the church. See how all this is being played out here in the signs in the heavens? So, the church did not fall yesterday. It still exists, as far as I know. And so again, it's another sign to inform us. But there was an event that occurred yesterday that, if our federal government actually do what they claim they would do for such cases, the church should fall. And I've told you about it in another video I did today. I filed in my counterclaim that even though I'd submitted other times and I've reported to the government other times, especially in the filings against the lawsuits against the church in the federal cases that I had, I tried to get it through, but they would not let me. They would not recuse themselves either, being compromised by the church, and that I was sex trafficked by the first wife. And it's because of the church's criminal operation that they're running here, which the government of the United States did shut down Brigham Young's church under John Taylor for that same reason. But for who knows why, other than the government backed off and left the church alone because of Grover Cleveland, was it? Who pardoned the Mormons only for polygamy, not for the tithing fraud scandal. But nonetheless, I think that had the government back off on the church. But they are not backing off on the branch-offs from Brigham Young from 1920 that have continued to branch off since then. Those have been in the news lately. and even new branch-offs from the Mormon Church, the Bergamite Mormon Church, likewise in the news lately, as Lori Vallow is back in psychiatric treatment. I'm suspicious that they're hoping now that they took her to court and presented the evidence against her, that she's going to change her mind now and testify against Chad. That's what I'm suspicious is what's being done here for sending her back in. Otherwise, it would be the defense who realize that their client is not understanding how serious of the charges she is facing, and don't want her to go to prison and are trying to get her into the cuckoo hospital for the rest of her life instead. And she doesn't seem to grasp. That's all she needs to do is say, I'll testify against Chad, throw him under the bus, and she'll get a lighter sentence than Chad will. Especially since I don't think she actually committed any of the murders like Chad did. But nonetheless, she willingly participated and approved of everything that went on. So, yeah. I'm following that case. I'm following difficult. She has a difficult inter-channel name, so I recommend that she purposely puts cult in all caps to help you guys recognize what she's trying to express. And it's a cult, but it was clever of her. She can get you some bands. Mine got left behind when I got evicted. They're too small for my wrists, or at least they were. They could probably be wrapped around several times over now after all the mass that I've lost since being here. I've gone down 3 belts, not 3 belt notches, 3 belts in size. And dear God, I am wasting away, and I'm experiencing malnutrition seizures on a more regular basis now as a result of that. As much as people tell you we get 3 meals here, they ran out of food last night. They had to go into other days' food last night to make sure everybody got fed. That's how bad the situation is, when all we get are supplemental food from the food bank, which is donated food. And so, yeah, we get all the crap food that none of you guys want to eat. And I won't eat it. I mean, dear God, I had to pick out the beans from the soup that we had the last couple of days. I will not eat those beans. I will not eat them in a car. I will not eat them from a jar. I will not eat them here or there. I will not. We got some peanuts in the gallery, I hear. So, but the sign in the heaven, that's what it was. That's what happened. And so it's supposed to be a warning to Mormons. You should have left in the Exodus in 2020, and you didn't. And so now, we've got the upcoming fall of the church, as the sign in the heavens is again reminding Mormons, get out of the church before it's too late. Because the federal government apparently is going to fulfill the prophecy of Lucifer being bound in chains for 1,000 years of millennial peace. Symbolically, meaning the leader of the church is going to get busted for his crimes. And like I said, I dropped the bomb yesterday, which if investigators should have already investigated, they should have already known. But nonetheless, you got to spell everything out for them and provide all the investigation for them, because they aren't capable, I guess. What education do they get to be an investigator? So, alrighty. I think that's